Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Virtual Executive Director podcast. My name is Becky Caldwell, and I'm your host. I am an executive coach for nonprofit and mission-driven leaders, and I'm also the actual executive director of the Virginia Highlands Festival in Abingdon, Virginia. This week on the podcast, I'm excited to bring back my fundraising coach, Lynn Terrell, for an interview about capital campaign planning and execution. Actually, this is going to be a two-parter because there's a lot of information, and I don't want to overwhelm you in any given week because we're all busy, right? So this week it's a two-parter, this week and next week, on capital campaigns. This first week we'll cover the first three of the four-step approach, the first three steps, which are the planning, the silent, and the major gifts phases of a capital campaign. And then next week, we'll cover the public phase and any FAQs that might come up. So since you will want to take notes, if you are driving, go ahead and listen through. That's okay. It's not like you're not going to learn anything. And then when you can, sit down with some paper, listen again. Or at least have paper handy. You know, sometimes I listen to podcasts at work when I'm doing something a little bit mundane. And that way, at least if something comes up that I want to write down, I have a desk in front of me. All right. Before we launch into the podcast, a couple of quick announcements. Number one, thank you to our Patreon supporters. Thank you to Marjorie Moore and to my spouse, Brendan Caldwell, who are two of our Patreon supporters. I would appreciate it so much if you would join them on Patreon to support this podcast. I don't have conventional sponsors. So the continuation of this podcast is a public effort. I feel like I'm running my own little NPR pledge moment, but there it is. Just tap the link right now, patreon.com/virtual executive director. And make your recurring monthly donation right now. You just set it up once, and then it'll automatically come out of whatever account you assign to it. So we start at $2 a month. If you've ever gotten $2 worth of value out of this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. It's super low-key, low-stress, and easy to do. Second announcement, I do still have slots open for individual coaching, executive coaching. My initial program is a 13-week program. If we've never worked together before, I like to start you on this 13-week program unless there's something specific, like hyper specific, like a project or something that you need my help with. So it's a 13-week program, super affordable and coverable by the technical assistance grants that are available out there, or capacity building grants, or professional development, that sort of thing. If you are interested in learning more, please check the website, virtualexecutivedirector.com, or email me, becky@virtualexecutivedirector.com. Last announcement, I will be at the VCA, the Virginia Commission for the Arts annual conference. I am not speaking. I'm going to go and just learn from other people and be around my peers, which I need desperately. And if you are going, please email me and let me know, or post in our Facebook group, the Executive Director Mastermind, and let me know, and then we'll just figure out a way to find each other. I think there's a reception at the end of the conference day. So let's figure out how to find each other and trade hugs, because I need that. I don't know, maybe you do too. I will post something in the Executive Director Mastermind group on Facebook, and also in the email. I do an email every week to my email list, and I'll post something about the conference in there as well. So if you aren't in either of those, you can ask to join the Mastermind on Facebook. And if you'd like to get on my email list, then just email me, becky@virtualexecutivedirector.com, or sign up through the website, virtualexecutivedirector.com. All right, on with the show.
Okay, thank you, Becky. It's wonderful to be here today. And capital campaigns have been my development focus really from the very beginning of my career. When I joined the Los Angeles County Museum of Art years ago now, I walked into it. They were finishing up a capital campaign for their new contemporary art building and just launching one for the Japanese pavilion for the Shinnecoin collection that they just been donated. So the very first thing I walked into was two capital campaigns, closing one out and launching one. So, and I'd never done one in my life. I had no idea what they were. Consequently, after I left the museum and I relocated back to New York City and ended up working as a fundraising consultant there, his major focus with the Charles Webb Company were large gift capital campaigns. And we did them from soup to nuts, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Basically, it comes down to four different phases. There's the planning phase, there's the silent phase, the lead and major gifts phase, and then the public phase. And they just really follow each other logically. Mm-hmm. They do take time in planning. So just right off the bat, my upfront caveat to anyone considering a capital campaign is to understand that you really do need to give it a couple of years at the minimum. Don't think, well, this year is our anniversary year. Let's do a capital campaign. You're already too late.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's so you really want to be looking. If your anniversary is 3 years from now, now's the time to actually start planning that, because otherwise you're going to miss it.
Yeah.
So and just using that particular scenario, that is the usual reason people do, we're doing a building in to commemorate our 75th year or whatever it is. But the very first step in that process would be what my firm and the firm that I worked with in New York call a planning study. And it's a little bit different from a feasibility study, where a feasibility study really basically helps you determine whether the goal you're projecting is an achievable goal. A planning study goes much more in depth than that, and it helps you not only to determine that, but also to identify your potential leadership in the campaign. It helps you to structure the campaign. It will map out a timeline for each phase of the campaign, and it becomes a really valuable tool in planning your campaign, because it will really basically take you at the outset. Once the planning phase is done, it will take you through both your silent, lead, and major gift phases, bring you up to your public phase. So
okay. Though I think we need to back up way before that. Because you've already taken us way past where I think some of my listeners might be. Because a lot of my listeners are founders or solo executive directors for their organization. And they might not even understand what a capital campaign is. So if we can back up a little bit more and define, what is a capital campaign? Why might you even want one?
That's fantastic. Thanks, Becky. Yeah, that's a really good place to start. I just make assumptions, don't I?
We both do.
Yes,
it's okay.
Yes, and it's a capital campaign is a super unique thing, really. Some organizations will never do one, and others will do one. You know what I mean? Others, like the LA County Museum of Art, are doing back-to-back capital campaigns. I don't recommend that, but it works for them because of their constituency. But generally, when we call it going to the well once in a while, it's a unique request, a one-time only request, that you will be going out to those who support you, those who you would like to support you, with a special appeal to fund something in particular. And it can be any capital expense that you are trying to cover. Number one, it could be a building you want to build. It can be an endowment you want to build. It can be basically just in commemoration of an event, a big event, a milestone. But it's always a campaign. It's called a campaign for a reason, because it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You achieve your goal and you celebrate. And you also go out to your donors and let them know you need them to continue making their annual gift. If they tell you, okay, great, I'll give you half of my annual gift for the annual and half for the capital campaign, at that moment you really want to thank them for that, but ask them to continue to support your annual campaign, because that is the reason for the capital campaign. Without the annual funding, you're not going to need the building. So, that really is a point right up front that people need to understand. And the capital campaign will have its own budget, its own expenses. It really is its own animal. It is created from soup to nuts, and it really becomes a huge focus, but it's a fabulous, fabulous vehicle for involving people with your organization, getting the word out about your organization. It's a high visibility event, and you can really make the most of it, and the more you make of it, the better. So I always looked at it as a great opportunity,
Yeah. Okay, great. So I think we have a better sense now of what it is and how we can deploy it sparingly, I think, as an organization.
Right.
So, all right, let's talk about the planning. Actually, let's do one little interim step, the feasibility study. Can you talk about why we might need to do a feasibility study and what that might look like?
Absolutely, yes. The feasibility study will help you to determine whether or not your campaign is quote-unquote feasible. You can say, okay, we want to build this building. The projected cost of building this building is going to be $5 million. So therefore, our bottom goal is $5 million. And because you're going out for a capital campaign, you're going to want to also build in expenses that are going to come with that new building. You're probably going to want at least 2 to 3 years operating revenue built in there, just to make sure that you're not building a new building and then you don't have the revenue to actually operate. So, you look at all these pieces and you set your goal. Now, though, can you raise that money? Is that possible with your contacts, with your constituents, with your prospects? Is it an achievable goal? And the way to learn that is to actually go and talk with those prospects and actually ask them, are you willing to contribute to this? Would you be willing to participate? Our projected goal is this. Do you believe we can achieve that goal? If not, why? If so, why? You need to really ask all those questions. And it's kind of amazing to me. I've conducted years worth of planning studies, and they're simple questions. I've had clients look at me and say, you're going to ask these questions and actually be able to figure this out? And the answer is yes.
Because it terrifies me to think of asking someone that. Like, I don't know about anybody else listening, but it's hard enough for me to make a phone call sometimes to ask for an annual gift. I like the thought of approaching someone and saying, and just like up front, so boldly saying, hey, we're looking to raise $1 million for, let's say, my organization. I would love to have $1 million, actually I'd like a 10 million, but let's say 1 million. I'd like an endowment for my organization because, that would ensure every year the Virginia Highlands Festival would be able to happen without a lot of the stress of an annual campaign, raising everything we need each year. But the thought of like, can you talk a little bit about the mindset behind going into a meeting and saying, hi, we want to raise $10 million. And is that something you would give $1 million to?
Certainly.
That mildly
there's
freaks
really
me out.
a structure and a method and methodology, Becky. So I'm glad you asked that, because, you're going to go in, the first thing you're going to do, and you and I have done this, we already worked on one of these. The first thing you're going to do is create your case for support, right? The who, why, where, when, how, that document. Why are we doing this? Why is it important? Why should you care? Why should you support it? And what benefit are we going to get and bring with this? So you prepare that document first, and that usually goes with a consultant and a board.
Mm-hmm.
And you prepare this, and once everybody's happy with it, you have the organization compile their list of donors. You're going to want to talk to all of your major donors, all of your potential major donors. You're going to want to talk to influential people in the community who may or may not support you, but may have influence over public funding, for instance. So you come up with a list. You come up with a good comprehensive list of as many names as possible that actually fit on there. Corporate leaders.
Oh my gosh, Lynn, that's a lot of work before
most of them should be in your database, either as prospects or donors.
Mm-hmm.
You can also work with your Chamber of Commerce to get listings for local businesses that you may want to reach out to and contact. Of course, you're going to work through your board and volunteers to contact people that they feel should be contacted in the know. The real main requirement for this list is these are people and organizations, foundations that need to be included at the get-go. They really need to be informed before the big word comes out. So they really are kind of your insider list.
Yeah.
And
it
then,
sounds like, sorry to just jump in.
Go ahead.
Your case for support is really talking about, so you're not asking for money, you're asking for what the money can do.
Right. Exactly.
What I got from that.
Yes. It really is. You're making your case.
Mm-hmm.
You're not saying, we're asking you for this money. You're saying, we are raising this much money to accomplish this. That's what the case will do for you.
We're asking you for a building. We're asking you for a sustainable new program. We're asking you for an endowed chair so that we can continue to do this work and serve these people. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that makes it a little less scary then.
It is a little less, because then the next thing you do is you draft a letter, and it will come from probably the chairman of the board, the executive director, and you mail that letter to these people with that case for support. And you tell them, that you're including this case for support, outlining and describing a proposed capital campaign that your organization is contemplating, and that you would like their feedback and input on your plans. And in order to accomplish this, you would like to have your designated consultant, and you really don't want an insider doing this. You want a third party, somebody who is not involved with your organization directly.
Why?
Because they can talk to that person openly. They can feel free to share their, there may be negatives that they want to share that they're not going to share with you, or probably your board chair, or positives that they may not share.
They definitely wouldn't share anything positive.
Right. Well, you never know. But and one of the points that the consultant does make is that all of the interviews are 100% confidential. They will not attribute anything to the person they're speaking with. If that person tells me they're going to make a $100,000 contribution to this campaign, I won't tell you that. I will not tell you that. They will fall in certain levels of gifts. 10% said they would do up to 1,000. 25% said they would do 25 to 5,000. You know what I mean? So it's done that way. They're anonymous. I wouldn't attribute an amount to anybody, or a comment, a specific comment. But so everything is anonymous. So they feel like they're not going to be, pinned out. Oh, Susie Jones said, that's not going to happen. And you really have got to have such integrity. All of the interviews stay with the consultant. The client should never get those. Those are the consultant's property. And I would say you should conduct, of the list, I never did fewer than 60 interviews, depending on the list. There have been times when I had to do, say, 40 or 30 just because the list wasn't long enough. But they're smaller organizations, and they're reaching out. They were successful still. But generally, you go out, you interview these people, as many face-to-face as possible. It can be done by video. It can be done by phone. And when possible, sitting in the room with that person is just the very best. And you reach out to them, and they tell you where you want to meet. Once the letters in the case are sent, the consultant follows up and makes the appointments and takes it over from there. Then it comes right out of your court. You don't even have to worry about it anymore.
Nice.
And the consultant does. They go out and they ask a series of questions that are really designed to determine several different things. The feasibility of the goal, the pros and cons of the campaign, who would be willing to serve in a leadership capacity in the campaign, if asked. Do you believe this goal is achievable? Would you consider one of the top 10 gifts? So when you go to meet with that particular person you're speaking with or organization, you would have a gift chart outlining how many gifts of what level you would need to achieve the goal. And while you're talking with them, you let them look at that chart and say, would you consider a gift to the campaign? And if so, where might your gift fall in this chart? And you'd be amazed how many people would say, well, probably here or probably there, maybe up there. If you can do this, I'll finish the campaign up here. I've had so many people do that. So you actually, by the time you're 3/4 of the way through this process, you have a really good idea of what's possible, who should be involved on a really, hands-on level. And there have been times when I've had to recommend you're not ready for a capital campaign, which they don't want to hear. But when that happens, then it's you, because of the interviews you've done, you know what they need to do to become ready for the capital campaign. So, it's the whole thing is a process, and it's a very valuable process. And I had somebody recently say to me, oh, I think that you don't really need to do these planning and feasibility studies anymore, not with, the internet and the way things are now. And I was like, what? I would never do a capital campaign without one of these first.
Yeah.
And in general, just to give people an idea, the process will probably take about 4 months from beginning to end. Yeah. So that's 4 months of the capital campaign right there is in the planning phase of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're done with that, you know what committees you need to organize for the campaign. You're always going to have a steering committee, which is a committee that consists of a chair of that committee and then the chairs of all the other committees, which would be lead and major gifts committee. You would have a prospect review committee, a cultivation committee. You can put lead and major gifts can be the same committee, but they'll probably shift a little bit. Lead gifts would come first, and major gifts would then come second, and some of the people will overlap. And somebody once said to me, I can't put together all those committees. Where am I going to get all those people? And I had to say what my mentor said to me when I was like, where are they going to get all these people? And he said, if they don't know all those people, they're not ready to do a capital campaign.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, you have got to have the ability to put together the required committees. And in my book, those committees will consist of your steering committee, lead major gifts, cultivation, critical. You have to have the cultivation committee. Prospect review. Prospect review can be a very loose committee. It can really consist of a chair and maybe one member who knows your community and donors well. And then you can just go and talk to other people to get their input on prospects and build up your prospect list. So it doesn't have to be, it's kind of nice if you can get a group of maybe 5 people in a room to sit and talk about your list. It's not always going to happen. So if it doesn't happen, it is a committee you can actually function individually, person by person, just, to get all the information you need. Because once you've come up with your prospect then donor list, you go out, you evaluate your prospects, you come up with what you think their capability is, everything you know about them. And then you start cultivating your prospects, and that's where the cultivation committee comes in. And that's the committee that will really work with hosts to hold very limited exclusive events where people are invited to come for a luncheon perhaps, or cocktails, or even a dinner. And during that time, the organization is there. They basically present their case for support. You watch a visual presentation of some sort about the campaign, and then over cocktails or over hors d'oeuvres or over dinner, you all talk about it, and you take questions and answer questions. It could be very informal. It doesn't have to be stiff. It can be a lot of fun, actually. And nobody makes any contributions. You make sure they know that up front when they're coming. They're not being asked for money. They're being asked for their input and their opinions. It's a way to engage people and get them involved. It's kind of a nice heads up that you are hoping to, get them really involved in the capital campaign. If not as a leader in the campaign, definitely as a donor. And they understand that. But the fact then after the event, you follow up with them more one-on-one, cultivate them, steward them, and when they're ready, ask them. And it's a very nice way of engaging people and getting them involved, because this way they do become part of your organization, and they don't just feel like they're being asked for a gift and then you're going to go away, which is exactly what you don't want to do anyway.
How do you know when they are ready for you to make the ask?
It's a very personal thing, Becky, and it's very individual. You're talking with them, you're filling them in, you're asking them questions. I've more than once had somebody say to me, okay, how much do you want? Which is why you need to know going in how much you want to ask them for. So never go to someone before you have that answer.
Yeah.
Really. And, because they know why you're there and they know what you're doing, but they appreciate the fact that you're telling them what you're doing, why you're doing it, asking them to give you their input. Sometimes you will never get there and you will know it. They are not interested. If they're not interested, you're going to know it. They will let you know. Whether they tell you, I'm sorry, this just isn't something I think I want to do, in which case you say, okay, that's understood, but, we're going to keep you in the loop anyway so that, you can follow our progress and see how we do. You never know. Somewhere down the line then, you can always go back to them and say, look, we're 90% there. Would you like to come in now? And that's when some people jump in with both feet and take you over the top. So, it's all built on relationships, which is why it's so critical how you decide who's going to be speaking with whom. And whenever you can, that needs to be a peer-to-peer ask. It's like major gifts that we talked about last time. This basically is major gifts for a specific purpose. Mm-hmm. And it has the same end result because you involve a lot of people with the organization. It opens the door to involving people. You're not just going to somebody and saying, we're asking you for an annual major gift, just an annual gift of $5,000. We're coming to you with this exciting specific thing. We want to expand. We want to add programs. We want to do this. We want to do that. But it's a one-time ask only. We're not going to come to you and ask you for this again. You can pledge it out.
So aim high too, right? Don't lowball. What is it? Someone said, don't insult somebody by asking for too little.
Too little. Right. They're going to be like, "Ooh, you didn't do your homework, did you?"
Yeah.
And it really is insulting. They'd rather you ask them for too much than too little, truly. Yeah. But also now then, so during this silent phase of the campaign, which is what
have we moved on to the silent phase? I want to make sure. Let's demarcate this then. So right now we've completed the planning phase, which can take about 4 months. So allow that at least that much time. And we are moving on to the silent phase. Can we define what the silent phase is? What does that mean?
Yeah, we can. And anybody who knows campaigns knows immediately. This is either the silent phase or the quiet phase of the campaign. And this is the phase of the campaign where you get your initial leadership involved. You get all of your committees set up. You get people really starting to take on the prospect review, determining who's going to be cultivated, who's going to be invited. All of that happens during this phase. You begin your materials preparation, your campaign brochure, any kind of documents or takeaways, those things that you want to put together. You begin working on them here. You won't finalize these until the end of the silent phase, because you're going to want to be sure to have all of your leadership names included. You know, you want to have everything hammered down before you actually go to print with anything, before you actually post anything. You can do interim things. You can make announcements. So-and-so is going to be joining as a co-chair of the capital campaign. So-and-so and so-and-so are going to be our honorary chairs, our honorary co-chairs. You can make those announcements along the way, and people will take notice. But you won't produce any real final materials until you have all of that lined up so that everybody's included. So that way, and that works to your benefit. So when you actually, and I'm not jumping ahead of the quiet phase, but when you go into your lead major gifts phase, you have all of those names on your materials, and that makes a difference. So, but in the quiet phase, go ahead.
How much time should we allow, do you think, for the quiet phase?
I would generally give that no fewer than 9 months.
Oh, wow.
You may even be looking at a year, depending on how much cultivation you need to do. So this is why I say you cannot just suddenly jump into a capital campaign and expect it to be successful. Yeah. It does take a lot of planning. It takes a lot of attention. Because during that silent phase, you're going to want to talk to and involve every single person, organization, foundation that needs to be on your front line. So everyone who needs to know before anybody else knows has got to be cultivated and involved during that phase. It's a big phase. And that doesn't just mean money. It also means, people of influence. They may not have a big gift to give you, but they may know, or, attorneys. A lot of the time I've seen attorneys in this role where they actually work with a lot of people that you want involved, and they're your key to getting them involved. They need to be part of your silent phase. People like that, people who have contact with the people you want to make a donation, people who are just important to the organization for whatever reason. Perhaps it's somebody who was a part of the organization when it was founded. Bring them on as an honorary chair. They may not be able to do much hands-on, but just having their name associated can make a big difference. You want to be looking at people like that. So it takes some looking, it takes some thinking, it takes some organizing, the cultivation. You're going to do at least one cultivation event a month, and keep them limited enough that you're going to be able to follow up with all of those people each month. And this process continues into the lead and major gifts phase as well, which you're looking at probably another 9 months there.
Okay, so how do we know when we are ready to exit the silent phase and move into the lead and major gifts phase?
When the minute you look at your list and there's not one name on it that you say, if she didn't know about this and learns of it through the lead and major gifts portion of the campaign, she's going to be mad. Because she should be a part of this quote-unquote leadership. She should be a part of this silent group that knew before anybody else knew.
Okay.
Insider group, that's your insider group. And they're a really critical piece of this, because they're the ones that then take you into the lead and major gifts phase, and they're your contacts and your leadership. They're the people who are on your lead and major gifts committee. They're the ones who can put you in touch with the people who can put you in touch with the people. They're the ones who know the Julia Louise Dreyfuses of the world and all of those people that are out there, that there is a way to. That's what you need to be looking at constantly with all of your potential supporters and supporters. So it's a critical phase of the campaign. And as soon as you have that, and everybody's, and I'll be honest with you, Becky, it normally kind of jump starts itself.
Okay.
Because, you have people then saying, okay, we need to throw a cultivation event and get so-and-so, 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 so-and-so there. And then the next thing you know, you're in it, and it starts happening. And it's nice because the leadership kind of steps forward and starts taking real control. And they start calling the shots, which is what's supposed to happen.
Great. Okay, so then we move into lead and major gifts phase, and that you said that takes about 9 months to
It's going
go
to take
through?
another 9 months. Yeah.
Okay.
And, you can always, as you're going along, and I actually strongly recommend this and encourage it, gauge what's happening, gauge where you are, make sure you're not hitting a plateau, and suddenly, you feel like you're dead in the water and nothing's really happening. Or make sure you kind of accelerated through it so you don't really need 9 months. It's going to finish up in 6. You can be flexible. Wait a minute, we're in our 9th month and we still have, 30 more people to reach out to and get to and involve. We can extend that. You can extend it. Nothing's written in stone. So, but, you want to have some general idea, and you do want to try and kind of stay with the calendar. But you can have some flexibility depending. Sometimes things happen out of the blue that you just don't expect. Somebody comes forward and says, well, we have this group, and we all love what you're doing, and we all got together, and we've decided we want to talk with you about, what you're doing. There you go. Suddenly that's a new ripple that you really want to deal with and take as much time as you need to deal with it. So flexibility is key, but, you have a general timeline, and I wouldn't do less than 9 months on that phase of
Okay.
it.
So lead and major gifts, that's when we start actually asking for money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, you're going to want to have all of your those who should be involved and should be committed should be in place at that point. And again, that's not always based on how much they can give, but there are going to be people. I just did a capital campaign not long ago where the board looked at me and said, where are we ever going to come up with this kind of money? Oh, this is ridiculous. And I was like, well, I've done the interviews, and I know it's out there. You can get it. And by the time we were done just with the board giving, the board is, of course, all has to be committed in that quiet phase. I should go back and make that plain. You need 100% of the board there. By the time we were done with the board in the quiet phase, we had $1 million towards their $3 million goal. And these are the same people saying to me, where's that money coming from? Where's that money coming from?
Oh, my gosh.
And then all of a sudden, this one gave 100. Well, I'm giving 200,000. Oh, I can do that over 5 years, no problem. They start stepping up, and I was just, and I knew from the interviews what the capability was. So I was pretty certain by the time the board was done, we were going to be at $1 million, and we were.
Wow.
It's just like, okay, guys, look what you just did. It's fascinating how people are, but they are. They need to be asked. They need to be convinced. Yeah, go. But if you've done your planning study and you can say that with conviction, that's fine because you've talked. You know what people can do. They're honest with you about it. It's interesting, but they are.
Yeah.
But so once you've gotten there and you're done with all of that, and you go into your lead and major gifts, which can be people who have given to you, and it's going to be a lot of people who have not given to you that can give to you at upper level that you've learned from your leadership, from your prospecting. They may be people you have absolutely no contact with, but through cultivation and through engaging them, the fact that it's a capital campaign, so they know it's a one-time only ask that's going to benefit their community, it's important. It becomes important to them. So they will become involved. And that's that group of people that you then cultivate them, steward them along, make sure they understand what you're doing and why, really take the time with them and get them involved with the whole reason for this and the organization itself. And when they're ready, then you will make the ask, or the right person will make the ask. And that's really done on relationship, based on relationship, or just based on peer-to-peer. We're both, let me think for a minute. We're both millionaires, or we're both, prominent citizens, or we're both people that people know. It's just kind of based on, something, a peer-to-peer quality between the asker and the person being asked. I encourage people to go like an asker, somebody who's actually got the relationship or can develop the relationship, and somebody from the organization, maybe the executive director, chairman of the board, somebody senior in the organization should be present to answer questions that maybe the person making the ask won't be able to answer. I always tell people, if they ask you a question and you don't know the answer, admit it and tell them, let me look into that, let me find that out for you. I should have known that, but I don't offhand. I'll get back to you. And then do get back to them with the information. I was doing one interview one time where they asked me, well, what percentage of their donors give $50,000 or give $5,000 and more? And I was like, that's a very good question. And I do not know the answer, but I will find it out for you, because I could have said, 10%. Well, I don't know that, I mean, and then they check it out and they're like, 10% don't give $5,000. What was she doing? Why did she say that?
Yeah.
So, if you don't know an answer, people respect it. They'll be like, oh, okay, well, get back to me on it. It also doesn't hurt, gives you a reason to follow up.
Yeah.
So, you don't pretend you don't know it, but if it happens, it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing, right? So, So good.
So in this phase where we're actually asking for money, are we continuing to hold cultivation events, or has that already just sort of wrapped up and
we can actually continue to hold cultivation events through the entire Lead Major Gifts phase, depending on who we have to cultivate.
Okay.
If we have people that we really need to get involved, informed, we can continue doing them. They're fun. They really are a lot of fun, and people get to know you and you get to know them. And you come away with new board members. You come away with new donors. You come away with new enthusiasts. It's really a fun thing to do. Or, conversely, if somebody has an issue, they're not just coming to you with the issue. It comes out in this kind of semi-public forum. It's a very exclusive. Maybe you have 20 people there, but somebody says, well, why do you do such and such? That really annoys me. And 9 times out of 10, it's not the organization that has to answer that. It's the other people there.
Oh, nice.
Address it. Yeah, so it ends up being just kind of a nice airing of all kinds of things. But it's always there. I've never been to one that wasn't positive, where people didn't come away happy and having had a good time.
Well, there's no pressure on it. You're just there to learn. You're not there to you're not making any asks or demands or requests, or you just want people there, and you're there to talk about something you all love and you're passionate about anyway. So
exactly.
Yeah, so it does sound like fun. Yeah.
It is. I went to one where it was for a children's orchestra that was being organized for students that were finding themselves in trouble, and the whole idea was to get them to learn a classical instrument, and it was really, really quite something. We went to this event in this beautiful home. It was one of the major donors who held the event. Well, all of her friends came, and they were all charmed by the children playing, which was a nice touch. Then everybody did cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, which were beautifully done. And then one of the attendees was a concert violinist, and they got up and they started playing the violin, and everybody was just listening and rapt. Let me tell you, I mean, it went on for hours.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and they got a lot of wonderful donors out of that particular event because people had so much fun. They all came away feeling like, we know each other, we love each other. It was great.
Yeah. I think so. It sounds like that it's all about creating moments of joy and fun and connection with your organization. Those are the best kinds of cultivation events.
Yep, the positive energy.
Yeah.
One person did an event, and she had a concert pianist come in and play the piano for everyone, and then there were hors d'oeuvres, and so you can feel creative and engaging. The whole idea isn't really to do a special event. It's to get them involved with what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But if what you're trying to do is raise money for a classical music orchestra, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
what if you're trying to raise money though for like a battered women's shelter?
Those are tough. I'll be honest with you. Those are tough. It has to be more somber, obviously. I was working with a battered women's shelter who was we were talking about exactly this. It's like, well, cultivation events, they're fun. And I said, well, when you're dealing with this serious an issue, though, you have to make the appeal differently. Then you're appealing to their heart, to their concern, helping them to understand how this happens, why it happens. So you're not going to be playing the violin, let's face it, But that doesn't mean it can't be in a lovely place, a relaxed place where people can, just enjoy the cocktail, the presentation. And then when it's over, you can have questions and answers and engage and involve them. I think art museums or cultural organizations kind of have an edge with this cultivation because they have appealing things that they can do. I was working with Recording for the Blind, and we would do these. And basically what we did was we would tell them about success stories, how people were able to use the recordings and go through college and become successful and independent and contributing members. And that became heartwarming, and people enjoyed that. So again, it was the same thing where it was just throwing that lovely event in a beautiful setting, having your materials for people, engaging people, talking, and then back and forth.
And connecting the money to what the money does.
Exactly. Yeah.
Connect the money with what the money does. I've given this advice so much recently, like even just in the past week. Connecting the money that you raise with what the money can accomplish removes so much of the fear behind asking. And when you're running a capital campaign, there is no room for fear. Thank you so much, Lynn. You guys, I hope you took a lot of notes. If this was helpful to you, please share it with your colleagues in development, with your consultant if you're working with a campaign consultant. Share it with your board so that they understand what has to happen and why it is so expensive to run a capital campaign and why you need so much time. And if you enjoyed this and found it helpful, in addition to sharing it with someone who needs to hear it, please also review the podcast wherever you're listening to it right now. Please rate and review it because that will help other people find this podcast, and we are all in this together. If you would like more support, if you are a lonely nonprofit leader or mission-driven leader, if you are leading a B Corp or any other sort of mission-driven enterprise, we would love to have you in the Facebook group. It is called Executive Director Mastermind, and you need to answer the 3 questions that I provide. Because if you don't, I just automatically decline your request. Because come on, I need to make sure that it's all real people in the group, which is incredibly helpful. We have almost 300 members right now, which is really exciting. And our members are located all over the world. So that means that at any given moment, when a fresh craziness pops up in your work life, you can pop into the group and someone will be available or around or paying attention who can respond and help you. So that's the Facebook group. And then also don't forget about joining the Virtual Executive Director email list. If you are an aspiring nonprofit leader or thinking about launching a nonprofit, or you are in a nonprofit adjacent business, like maybe printing, or I'm talking to you, Dana Wolf. Thank you so much for being on the email list. If you are a banker, or if you are a foundation head, or any number of things that would lead you to interact with a nonprofit, or if you're a board member, please join the email list. You can sign up right on the Virtual Executive Director website. It's virtualexecutivedirector.com. And then you can also learn more about my coaching programs. So thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week with part 4 and FAQs about capital campaigns. See you next time. And remember, we shine brighter together.